any tech support questions, I will put my contact information in the chat. I'm just going to give a very quick overview of how Zoom works. So you're going to see the chat button. I'm going to type hello in the chat right now. Trinice wants everyone to be commenting. Put your thoughts and ideas in the chat. If you have questions, I'll be monitoring those to make sure they get answered during the Q&A or that they get answered over the course of the weekend. There's also, if you go under participants, you're going to see the raise hand feature. There's going to be times that Trinice will ask you to raise your hand. You're also going to see that mute button on the far left. For this session, you're going to be able to unmute yourself and to mute yourself. There will be times when Trinice will say that she wants interaction and will ask people to unmute themselves. So at that time, you'll click the unmute button and then just remember to unmute yourself afterwards. We just ask that you don't unmute yourself unsolicited. So please don't unmute yourself just to ask a question. Please wait until she asks people to unmute themselves. Aside from that, up in the top right, you're going to see a button that says gallery view or speaker view, depending what view you're in right now. Right now, if you're just seeing my face big on the screen, it will say gallery view. And then if you click on that, you're going to see a whole bunch of small faces. Or if you're seeing a whole bunch of small faces, you might want to change it so that it says speaker view, so that you just see my face. And then that way, whoever's talking or singing, it'll toggle back and forth between them. But aside from that, let's pass it off to the amazing Dr. Trinice Robinson Merton.
Well, actually, I'm going to go first really quickly.
Oh, totally kidding.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm Laura Martin, aka Dr. Trinice's daughter. I'm so excited that everyone is here today. I will quickly just do a rundown of Google Classroom because I know that some people are unfamiliar with that. So you should be seeing my screen right now. So if you look at the top right corner, there's a plus sign. And that's where you can either join a class or create a class. And I think everybody here is in our class, but if you're not, please let me know because it is important because that is where the recordings will be posted and all the assignments that you will have to do. So when I click on our class, you can see our assignments, but it is easier to see all of our assignments here in the classwork section right next, like right on the top. So right when you press that, you'll see a Google Classroom tutorial. So if you have any more questions still after me explaining it, you can watch that and I will be happy to answer any more questions you have relating to Google Classroom. So this is where everything is posted. This is where the recordings will be posted and any of the assignments that you have to do. So yeah, that is Google Classroom. I wanted to introduce Adriana, who will be answering any questions on Dr. Trinice's behalf. So you can unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Adriana. I'm going to be monitoring the chat for any questions just to make sure that everything gets answered. So I'll be here if you need anything.
And
awesome.
Billy and Adriana speak multiple languages, so I don't want anyone to feel like they are limited in their discussion.
Okay. Yeah, I speak French and Portuguese, and I think, Adriana, you speak Portuguese as well, yeah?
I speak Spanish, French, and English. Yeah.
Spanish, French, English. Awesome.
Okay, so we've got a lot of languages down here, so, you know, don't be shy. We are family, indeed. I'm sorry, I cut you off, Laura. Did you have anything else?
Nope, I was just going to move it on to you.
Well, thank you. So I don't know how many of you all got to work with your parents or aunties and uncles when you were younger as your first job, but I am so elated to be able to share this learning experience with my daughter, who's a bass player, as you can see. And if you're looking at her screen, you see her double bass in the back, singer as well, musician, and it's just been really, really great being able to share this experience. And as you have probably gotten emails from her, you'll see her a lot. She's very active. And the best part about it is she's in the house. So, you know, if you need to get to me, you reach out to Laura and say, hey, go tap your mama on the shoulder, you know, in a way that's very cool. So I appreciate you all being here. I appreciate you sharing your screen time with me. You know, screen time is valuable these days because all of our lives are on the screen. So the fact that you are willing to spend your weekend with me and growing in these areas. I am truly humbly blessed, and I'm enjoying seeing your faces. Speaking of which, I want to see your faces. So I am, again, from the way that I speak and the way that I present myself, it's very interactive, and I am not going to let Zoom stop that. So I need you to nod. I need you to be like, mm-hmm. Because I'm going through, even when I share my screen, I still see all of you. So I need you to be like, yep. You go ahead, and if you don't feel like sharing your screen, you don't feel like turning your screen on, that's okay. Go on, put a thumbs up, be like, yep, I hear you. Okay, I need that feedback from my own self. All right, can y'all do that for me? All right, okay, I see you. All right, that's what I'm talking about. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with day 1. So I broke up each of these days into 3 different components of soul ingredients methodology. Today is going to focus more on the body. Tomorrow is going to focus on the style, and Sunday is going to focus more on the interpretation. So I'm just going to share my screen right now, and we're going to get this party started in the right way. All right. All right, let me see. Yes, why do I always sound like I'm starting a party? Because it's party. That's what it is. All right, so this is day 1. I'm just opening my screen so I can still see you all of your beautiful faces. I know some of y'all like it is way too early for all this, but it's okay. Because you're right here with me. All right. So here's the basics. What does it mean to be a soul ingredients method teacher or influence with soul ingredients methodology? The basic concept is that you have to recognize that your role in this partnership between you and the student and the singer is that of a facilitator. You're saying, I am here to help you along your journey. I am not the magic wand. I am not here to grant you this gifting of voice and style so that you might be all of a sudden a fabulous singer. But I am here to facilitate the journey, to help you discover who you are and how you best communicate in a way that's going to be healthy and sustainable for you and what you have to do. So that means, and I want everyone to make sure that you have some sort of notepad, because as you notice, there is no course book for this. I'm giving you the information. I want you to take notes. The videos will be available for 2 weeks after the class, so you can go back in and just retake your notes. And this is the way that I teach in my voice lessons. You know, I want you to have your journal so that as we're introducing concepts and writing them down, you're writing down what's meaningful to you, okay, and what triggers that you need to highlight. So this is you creating your own coursework. So going back to the slide, a soul ingredients teacher recognizes the importance and the function of student-centered teaching approach. That means that what I'm giving the student is based upon the student's needs and desires with my monitoring. It is not me imposing what you should sound like. Even though traditional pedagogy is laid out that says, here's my assessment tool. You need to sound like this, and this in order to be casted, in order to be this, in order to be commercials. Yes. You know, if we're training a top 40 singer, if we're training someone to fit a certain role, there are some parameters that you may need to acknowledge. But there's a difference between acknowledging something and inferring that that is the only way, that is the only sound. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do, we're trying to create elite singers. And if you line up the tops of every genre, they don't sound the same. They bring their own individuality to their work. And so if we are training elite singers, we need to be training them to be their best selves. So we're empowering students to recognize and control the function of their body as related to voice production. So I need them to know, what is it that they're doing? Everything that they're doing is not wrong. we don't value when they're speaking. Like, oh, you just totally emoted that wrong when someone's speaking. No, you receive them for who they are. So we're guiding these students and making sure that they're able to recognize their own strengths, their own vocal strengths, and where their potential is. We're trying to provide efficient and articulate strategic plans that will help maintain and enhance the characteristics that they already possess. Right? We're not going to start with, oh, this is where you need to be. Hey, no, let's start with, where are you? Who are you? How can we enhance that sound so that you can be and maintain your authentic self? We're looking at guiding students in recognizing their own limitations and provide strategies and context for prioritizing which goals that needs to be developed and in what order. That's important because there's sometimes we can perceive things, particularly based on science. And it's not that I'm saying that science is wrong, but you also have to recognize that science science can be biased. As much as it can be objective, it can also be biased. Why? Because if you're going to determine characteristics of what's right, what's sustainable, then for singing, period, and you only test one demographic, and you only put your data based on what's valued in that particular demographic, then it's possible that your data may not relate. So if you as the teacher are like, yes, okay, science says this voice type is healthy, this voice type is not healthy, this voice doing this is sustainable, doing this is not sustainable, or the characteristics of this makes this sound and characteristics, then you start to narrow the individual person. And you start to impose certain biases. One of the things that many of the somatic voice work teachers, and for those of you in here should already be on the chat. There's been times when I've posted things about like gospel singers, particularly older gospel singers that are still singing and performing. And with the context of, when you listen to them young, based on science and based on even what you know as quote unquote down as you are with CCM and understanding cultures and characteristics, you might not have heard that person then and said that sound is sustainable. And then you hear them now and you're like, yeah, they still singing. They still singing. So these are the things that we're going to be shifting when in the way that we look at music, the way that we teach music, the way that we hear music, the way that we share music. So we're really talking about pedagogy and perspective, and we'll talk more of that on the slide after this, but I want to just continue to lay out our kind of 10 commandments, if you will. So at the basic of our teaching, we want to encourage the student to value the quality and characteristics of their natural voice and authentic expression. A soul singer is someone that is ready to emote their natural self in the characteristics, using the style characteristics based on the genre that they're singing in. And this will become much more clear, again, as the story continues, as the weekend goes by, as to what I mean by that. But if we're going to sit here saying, we want you to be authentic, and I want you to be unique, and I want you to tell your story, but yet and still, we haven't valued the process in their training, at what point are they going to learn to turn that on? At what point are they going to start believing that their process has value? The way they cry is valid. What they sound like when they're happy is valid. So this process of self-validation and using what we know from science, using what we know from somatic voice work in terms of how to develop a particular sound, we do it based upon what they're presenting. We need to understand, be able to understand and can articulate the most generic voice conditioning requirements associated with various genre-based performance practices as teachers. Because, again, if we're teaching people how to communicate, style is culture. You know, when you're training someone to go over to Spain, you need to let them know whatever the characteristics are, what to expect. You know, if somebody kisses you on the cheek, don't be all offended. You know, these are those, so you need to be aware of what are those cultural practices within that style. What are the parameters that are valued within that style? And not assume that trained singing means one thing, but recognizing that it means multiple things depending on where you are. All right? And I want you to be able at the end of this weekend to develop personalized style conditioning exercises, which we'll talk about a little bit later today, what the differences of those things are. And actually, we'll do that on day 3. And also on day 3, we'll talk about how to guide students, and day 2, in developing and articulating emotional interpretation. All right? So that's what this weekend is about. And that's where our goals are coming from. So again, pedagogy, voice teaching in perspective. It is our job now to help redefine what that means. We have been conditioned to accept certain cultural practices in terms of how we teach formal pedagogy based upon classical European teaching models. And it's not that I'm creating a hierarchy, but what I am saying is that you need to make sure that you are understanding what you're using, why you're using, and you're adjusting your parameters for teaching according to what is required of that style. The areas that we're going to talk about are all folk-based, music by the people for the people. We are not talking about staged, meaning someone is predetermining what your sound and style and emotion should be based upon what was written down. The demographic that we are going to be expressively teaching are those demographics whose the material that you're presenting or the material that you're singing is your own personal interpretation. That's a different mindset because now you are the creator, you are the validator. So we're going to do this from training the voice. What does that mean in training the voice? What does that mean in terms of training the style? And what does that mean in developing the total artist? In terms of training the voice, I start by acknowledging and building upon the speaking voice. This is not a, it is not of saying, like Jeannie is one that's like, don't go to the speaking voice for training certain things. She says that a lot because she's like, no, go to the registration. But I need you to understand the difference between a functional practice. To say, don't go to the speaking voice to train chest voice has more to do with being diagnostically specific about what it is you're doing. When I say I'm going to the speaking voice to build it, it means I'm acknowledging where it is now. Period. Because I want to be able to build upon the sounds the student is already making. Because if I want them to be their emotive self, I'm not going to take away the one true self that they're doing innately, which is speak. My job is to be able to help them sustain those sounds first. I want them to sound like they do when they get happy. I want them to sound like they do when they get sad. I want them to sound like they do when they get excited. I want them to sound like they do when they get frustrated. Because in this style, in this demographic that we're teaching, how are you going to be unique if you're trying to imitate somebody else crying every time you sing a sad song? So I'm valuing who they are, what they sound like. Then we can expand those areas using somatic principles with intention to say, okay, so now let's see if we can expand your color palette. This is why I encourage everyone to take level 2 over and over again. Because how are you going to guide someone along a practice when you don't know how to be specific? Okay, how do you know how to build someone's natural voice when you're not even sure what that is? Like you don't even know where you are. So we're looking to identify the person's emotive default. People from different cultures, from different backgrounds, they emote differently based on what they were raised to do. Some people hold their emotions in and they kind of stay here the whole time. Like, oh, that's great. Oh, that sucks. Some people are a lot more animated. Oh my gosh. I tend to be more towards that spectrum. You know? And understanding what that means allows them to be able to first emote honestly before you start to emote musically. And so the processes that we're going to go through this weekend is about each of us as teachers going through this process for ourselves. Because socioeconomic status, cultural reasons, education, the higher we climb, the more we are taught to contain your emotions so that you do not appear weak. You do not appear less, weak or ghetto or trash or whatever. We have all these reasons for doing so. We contain our emotions because we feel like, I'm going to be judged. But yet and still, we want to go out there and be like, yeah, I'm going to emote in this song authentically. Right? So this is a true to self process. We want to develop functional coordination in the context of emotional expression. That's the context. When I'm sad, my voice sounds like this. So how do I sustain that? I mean, I don't know about y'all, but for when you're talking and you're animated, if you're an animated person, your voice will go up. You'll be like, oh my gosh, right? I promise I do not stop to think about what kind of mix I'm going to hit when I get excited. It's just not even in my thought process, right? But when we sing, all of a sudden we impose all these things. I got to do this right? So no, that's not what we're doing. Pedagogy and perspective. I'm training that if this is where I go when I'm excited, what do I have to do to my voice so I can keep it in its place? And what does it sound like? Tell me what kind of mix this is. That's my mix. That might have these characteristics. And this is what I do freely. So I'm saying that in terms of saying, I need you to start opening up how you think about voice. How do you think about assessment? How do you think about training goals? Where are you building them based upon? And how can you be sensitive enough that you see the person and get them to finally explore their sound possibilities? We're not filling stadiums with acoustic voice. There are certain things that most, if not all, folk-based singer singing a microphone. Therefore, there are so many textures and sounds and nuances that can be captured, that can be used, that are not even in the pedagogic structure in other styles because they can't be, you know, as part of a sound. You can't put that in opera. Who's going to hear that? So it's not a matter of hierarchy. No, this is right and this is wrong, but it's a matter of context. All right? In terms of training the style, you have to understand style as cultural expression. Style is cultural expression. Regardless as to where you are, and especially, and I find this very true with singers, particularly because our ears are so adept. I don't know about you all, when you go visit, whether it's family or you go out of town and you're there for a long time, you start just sounding like where you just been. Like you start picking up, or around friends, all of a sudden, you're like saying the exact same things they say in the same way. You just kind of absorb nuances. Your accent may drift towards wherever it is, and then you're like, whoa, you know, just because you hear it and you kind of assimilate, most times subconsciously, and as a result, it comes out authentically. So style as a cultural expression. We want to identify and define tools for improvisation and creative expression. All genres have a place for improvisation and creative expression. Folk-based, that is. Some people do it as a written out song. In the Black folk-based traditions, we're going to go through all of those tools, those basic tools that are experienced different ways depending on the genre. But I separate those into 5 different areas. We want to build exercises that both develop technical facility in the instrument, but also provides space for creativity. Okay? So because this idea of self, creativity, emotive expression, sustaining our natural sounds, and doing that in a way that sounds authentic to ourselves, we have to integrate all of those characteristics into our exercises. Developing the artist. Who are you? Who is your emotional self? What are you here to say? Black folk-based music, in its tradition, is a functional music. It has function. Typically not music for music's sake in the classical sense. It's a very deliberate function. And what is deemed as virtuosic is one's ability to collectively bring a audience, if you will, audience or congregation, depending on the context, to a collective sense of joy, collective sense of sorrow, collective sense of healing, collective sense of celebration. There's a function. So what are you here to say? How do you articulate your emotions in a manner that is in the style, that's culturally viable for wherever you are? And we're trying to get them to tell these stories. What story are you telling? And recognizing what influences define who you are. the American melting pot, the world melting pot. How do we allow and give ourselves permission to have these influences, but then be our natural self? You know? So this is all a part of this process. So this is a big, heavy process that you have been blessed to be able to teach somebody and help them through their journey. That's a lot. It's more than the notes. It's a lot. So when we look at the methodology, we organize these things into 4 categories. Anatomical awareness, voice conditioning, which is like vocal fitness, but I can't use vocal fitness because that is copywritten. Probably didn't know that, vocal fitness training. But vocal fitness, voice conditioning. How do I just get my instrument, for my instrument's sake, stronger? It's the going to the gym, it's the calisthenics, it's the lifting weights. Style conditioning is getting my voice ready to do those activities that are necessary for that specific genre or that specific activity. So dribbling a basketball, dribbling drills for basketball is going to be a lot different than dribbling drills for soccer or football, American football, right? Even though we're using the same word. For people that don't play soccer, they wouldn't know that kicking a ball up the field is called dribbling. So if you're in a context and you're like, oh yeah, we're going to do this dribbling drills, and they come in bouncing the ball in the hand, you're like, wait, that doesn't even make sense. Like what? And that's what happens a lot of times when people are coming from a classical standpoint using words and like, yeah, you do it like this. And you're like, what? But okay. All right, I'm just going to trust you because you got the degrees. All right. And then lastly, interpretation coaching. There's a whole model for that. So today is going to be all about the voice. So our teaching goals, I want to introduce you all to a concept called ACT. A plus C plus T equals sound. That's the three parts of making sound production, right? Power source, the vibrator, and the resonator. I make it act, air, chords, and track to make it easier for my students to understand, and so that they're not troubleshooting the wrong thing. What do I mean by that? I want them to know that if there's something wrong with the sound that they're looking for, they're not changing all 3 things at one time. That gives them a sense of checkpoint. Okay, was my breath support or pressure where it needed to be? Sometimes it's yes. Are my vocal folds where they need to be, like registration-wise? Sometimes it's yes. Is my vocal tract where it needs to be for the sound? Sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no, for all of these things, right? So it gives you a way to kind of just narrow things down. We're developing oral, visual, and kinesthetic awareness. Again, our goal is to help them through this journey. But if they don't know what they're feeling, if they're not aware, you know, I'm quick to say, I can't get into your voice. So you got to tell me what you're feeling. This ain't piano. I can't put my hands on your hands now. Okay? But they can't do that if I don't take them through the process that gives them the vocabulary to be able to communicate with me in that way. We want to understand contraction versus constriction throughout these 3 components. You know, contraction versus constriction of the support mechanism, the air support. I'm sure you all, for those that have taught for a long time, have seen people stuck in their breath. They're just so rigid, trying to get that full breath. We know what it means to be stuck in a registration. We definitely know what it means to be stuck along the vocal tract. So we're teaching students to recognize and be able to monitor their vocal output so that they can be in control of what they're doing in a way that's honest for them. We're also understanding style versus a default. What is my voice? You may have heard Jeannie talk about vanilla voice, and I use that a lot because we sing so many styles, we as teachers, particularly. And we've been trained to sound good, and we've been trained to think about sounding good, our idea of what good is. That even for ourselves, and especially for ourselves, we don't even know what the real self sounds like. You mean, what you mean, open my mouth and say, ah? But that's not singing. Right? And we stop that process. So we're going back to that in the next break. But what I want to do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a series of exercises that I do with my own students as a way to show you the process that I do. And in this, you're going to want to change the landscape so that you can see more people while you're seeing the slide, because we're going to be doing things together as we're going through this process. So the model is, what does science say about my body? What do I say about my body? Okay? Because oftentimes we look at something and we're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's what it's supposed to be, but never actually say, oh, well, how do I actually feel that? Is my body even shaped like that? Okay? So we're going to go through this video. I've seen this video a gazillion times, and if anyone has taken the class with me before, you've seen me use this video. It's a diving video. In every video that we go through today, you are going to write down now something new, something confirmed, and something challenged. Means something that you learned in this video that you didn't notice before or didn't know about. Something confirmed, like, yep, that confirmed what I was thinking or what I knew. And something that challenged, that says, oh, I was really looking at it as this, but looking at this video, maybe I might want to think about this. This is an important process for people, particularly the science nerds, because we get so used to seeing models, we get so used to seeing that we stop looking for something new. We stop looking to correct and reassess what we know. So you're going to write these down, and then we're going to go to the chat after the video. Okay? Something new, something confirmed, something that challenges.
Mechanics of breathing. Consciously take a breath and think about the fact that there are 10 different muscle groups working together to make this happen. These muscle groups include the diaphragm and intercostal muscles. The main muscle used for breathing is the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a dome-shaped structure consisting of several large muscles, which is sandwiched between the chest cavity, containing the lungs and the rib cage, and the abdomen, containing the digestive system, including your stomach. The muscles that move the rib cage itself are the internal and external intercostal muscles. They are each attached to the ribs and run between them. To inhale air, the diaphragm contracts and moves down, while the external intercostal muscles contract, forcing the rib cage up and out. The combined effect of the diaphragm and intercostal muscles increases the volume of the chest cavity and expands the lungs. This expansion of the lungs increases their volume, reducing the pressure within them, causing air to be drawn in. This action is similar to a piston sucking petrol into a car engine. In normal breathing, we use around 25% of our lung capacity, which is called our tidal volume. As you inhale deeply, the diaphragm moves further down into the abdomen, pushing your belly out, giving more room for the lungs to expand and draw in more air. This type of breathing is called belly breathing or abdominal breathing and is critical to prepare you for your free dive. Belly breathing allows you to completely fill your lungs with air. The maximum amount of air your lungs can hold is called your total lung capacity. With training, you can use more of your lung capacity.
Okay, I was trying to put up my chat so that now I can ask you to type in something new. So just say something new dash blah, something confirmed dash blah, whatever it is. Something challenged. Normal breathing, percent 25. 10 muscle groups. Yep, Susan. Muscle groups. Belly breathing. A lot of people are like, wow, the intercostal muscles, the way those work. Let me open this so I can make it bigger so I can read it faster. Combining the effect of the intercostal muscles, being something confirmed. The intercostal muscles, how they work, how you can increase your lung capacity. That's great. So this process is really important, not just for us, but for the students. Because then it gets them thinking in a way. You're giving them an action. Do something while you're looking. What are you looking for? I'm looking for something new. Especially good for folks that are working with either trained or at least people that come in already knowing or having training and they think they know everything about what their voice should be. And you're like, that's awesome. So talk to me about it. And you'll be like, well, okay. Now, I use a lot of images. And as I look at images, I look at what is it that this is showing and how does it relate to my body? Number one, I'm looking at the position of the diaphragm. I'm looking at it from the front, which is the far left, or yes, however it appears on your screen, to the back. I'm looking at it in terms of, I'm looking at the lungs, how they're sitting in the back, showing from the back versus the front. And this is the part where I want you, and this is the process that we're going to start looking at, is saying, if science says, this is how my lungs sit in my body. If science says the bronchial tubes part, the trachea parts into the bronchial tubes and they part into these and let out these areolas at the very edges. These branches are break down into these sections, going more towards the outer parts of my lungs. When I breathe in, where exactly is the breath going in my body? And if I'm feeling air concentrated in one section, like pressure-wise, if I only feel the front of my chest expand, well then what's happening to the rest of the lung? Or vice versa, if I only feel my back expand, and I don't feel anything in the front, then what's happening there? Not judging, literally, just asking, inquiring. If I'm not feeling any things in my sides, particularly if science is right in all the diagrams that show the lungs, if it says, okay, trachea, 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 split, and then things are flailing out this way, if I'm not feeling the sides of my body expand, well, what's happening? Okay, so these are questions when you're trying to, and I want to go back to this video, but particularly
To inhale air, attach to the rib, exhale air, and move the muscle page up and out. The muscles at the ridge itself, internal and external intercostal, attach to the rib. The diaphragm contracts and moves down, while the
this is much easier to do on YouTube because you can be like, ee. But what I was trying to get to, there we go. What I was trying to get to in a way that you can see more clearly is the front. There, right there. Stop. Go back. All right. That's good. I need everyone to stand up. And of course, I can see you all. I know you can't see everybody, but I can see you all. So I want you to stand up. And I want you, and the reason why I want you to see everyone as you do this, because you start to acknowledge our bodies and how they change. So I want everyone to feel along their clavicle. So just feel along their clavicle. Okay? Some people, their clavicle sits like this for whatever reason. Some will have a little bit more of a V-ish shape, like they just, okay? Some may seem like they'll slope a little bit down. Again, I'm not here to say what's normal or what's right. I'm just here to notice that everybody's body and bone structure is set up a little bit differently, okay? So let's follow that, the clavicle, down the sternum. And go all the way down the sternum, all the way down until you get to the soft spot and then come back up to the hard part. So the solar plexus, and come back to the hard part. So now at this point, you should be at the top right here. Oh, I should do this from the front. There we go. That's the picture I wanted. All right. So if you're here, and this is for women, this will be right at the bottom of the bra strap, right? That means that this is where the top of my diaphragm is. If science says, if science says the diaphragm is sitting, the top of it is sitting at right behind the bottom of my sternum and running alongside my ribs. Now I want you to dig inside your ribs and really find where is the bottom of your ribs, all the way around, all the way around to the back. Dig, 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 dig. In theory, science says it's just muscle and fascia. Okay? So in theory, we shouldn't be puncturing anything, but we're just noticing. Okay? So if that is the case, what shape, and I want you to do this with your hands into the camera, what shape is your ribs? Like science says right here that this is like an equilateral triangle. I'm telling you right now, mine is shaped like this. I have an obtuse. My ribs go straight out like this. It feels like this for me. There are some people that are absolutely like this, like an equilateral. Lateral. Mine are obtuse. So in the camera, I want you to show what it looks like for you. What is it for you? And maybe you guys can see multiple people, or at least 6 on your screen. And you can see all of these different variations. That's a lot of variation. But yet we expect everybody to feel things the same way. Right? So even if we give people the same direction, it doesn't mean that it's going to be perceived in their body the same way. Something else. If you look at this if this again science says, and you see the top of this hip bone and the distance between the top of the hip bone and the bottom of the rib, the bottom of my rib cage is here, and that hip bone right there is here. Like, I have no waist, none, done. I can barely fit my finger between it. My body does not look like that. Okay? Which, like literally, I mean, I can fit my finger, thumb, and just doing like this, I'm literally in between the bottom of my ribs. Okay? Which would explain for me and my body, if all of my torso is mostly rib cage, why a lot of my support I feel in my back and my ribs. For me. It also explains why when people were telling me to push my stomach out to create this sense of being full, that it created a lot of pressure in my body. And it's not that it wasn't right. The instruction wasn't right. It was just, it wasn't in the context of who I was. It didn't have, so now I'm having people do these things and we say, well, let's discover what that means for you. This is the concept. The concept is to not make your ribs crush your stomach. Okay? So pick your ribs off your stomach. I mean, instead of stand safe, just pick your ribs off your stomach. Okay. Now where's that feel? Now, are you standing up enough that you can move back if you wanted to? If you can't, then you're up too much. All right? So pick your ribs off your stomach. Put your hands on your diaphragm. Right? Which is, according to science, go back to that sternum and go straight across and then spread your hands all the way. See, my ribs are down here. So, and this is important. So when the people see me doing this, they don't think my hands are on my waist because this is my rib cage. My rib cage is right here. I don't have a waist. So my hands are on, as science says, my diagram as it responds to my body. Okay? So if I'm squeezing or holding myself, and I inhale, now thinking about sending air, not for singing, I'm just breathing. If I'm thinking about, well, what does that feel like? If I can send air to, or should I say allow air, because it's not sending, it's just allowing it. If I can allow air to all of those alveolus, which is the little balls at the edges of the bronchial tubes, how does my body expand? What tenses before I actually fill up? Because you'll find when you inhale, you feel like, okay, that's it. But then you say, no, let some more air in, and the air mysteriously still goes in. And then you're letting it go. And you're doing it again. How is that different from what you do when you sing? Or the same? Again, not here to draw judgment, not here to even tell you what to do differently. But I'm here so that you know what it is that you are doing. Instead of the vocabulary that you used before to just say, well, what I'm doing is I'm doing this abdominal support. No, this level of awareness is a whole lot different. Because abdominals, there's a whole lot of abdominals. And depending on your body type, that could mean a number of things in your body that work just as efficient. Okay, you can sit down. So let's talk about breath management. So this is how, again, I'm guiding students to recognize what their body does naturally or what it can be doing more optimally, you know, with this in mind. So this is how I organize breath management. Breath support versus breath control. So these are all pedagogy terms, and so that's why I'm very, very careful about making sure that I tell you what it is that I mean when I'm using it. So I say the system of breath management is managing breath support, how much air is in the body, the air that is supporting the tone, to breath control, how the air is leaving the body, for the most simplest words, right? So the air that's carrying the sound versus the air that's helping to stabilize the sound. One level down, this could be measured in subglottal pressure or pressure inside the lungs, breath support. Breath control can be measured by the rate of breath flow, or what we call transglottal airflow, which is how fast or slow the air is actually moving. How do we control breath support? We are using muscles that help maintain the air inside the lungs, the air pressure inside the lungs, right? So we're creating this antagonistic support. Depending on the style that you sing, how much of this you need may differ. And the way you control it may also differ. Controlling airflow. The separate muscles, ideally, particularly in folk-based music styles, you want to use two different muscles, two different sets of muscles. Ideally, they should be independent. Like, you should be able to hold your ribs up and make your belly move. Okay? For me and my process, I have found that when I am singing classical music, I cannot control my breath in the same way that when I sing popular music. Because when I sing folk-based music styles, period, just in general, not just popular, but whatever, there's a certain level of flexibility that I need in my breath pressure to happen instantaneously in the way that it happens in normal speech. Like when I finish a word, like the sound just kind of decrescendos on its own, right? When I'm singing classical music, particularly art songs, which is where I'm moving into right now, African American art songs, I find it difficult. Well, not difficult. I mean, I find it that I have to breathe because of the style requires you to maintain the subglottic pressure consistently through the end of the phrase, unlike with like jazz or anything else, that the rate, I have to be more engaged all the way through the phrase. When I use that same principle in and try to apply it to folk, I lose the sense of flexibility in the breath flow. Now, that could just be where I am right now. And, 3 years from now, I might be like, no, you can do, here's the one that goes for the both of them. I don't know. I'm just starting the process of going back into art songs. But I do know that if I am emoting in a folk-based style musically, then I need my breath to be just as flexible. I need it to be there when I want it to be there, and I need it to chill when I don't want it to be. So it's not like I'm conditioning my body to do this one thing every time. Okay? So breath management in that sense. What are we using? This is where we go back to that concept of body. There's no one way. Because everybody, not only is everyone's body different, but everyone perceives their body differently. So a part of this journey in helping them discover themselves is to go through that process with them. And to say, okay, so where are you feeling this? Where can you, so what I use the model of a house. Is your house in order? House being to my torso down, that's my house, right? And I'll say, particularly for my younger students, younger, I mean undergrad and high school, middle school, don't let your roof collapse, right? Don't let your walls collapse. And give me some energy from somewhere here. What does that mean? With the caveat that everything if this is my little chimney, are you seeing my painting? Can you see my painting? Okay, you're following so this is my little chimney. Don't be blocking my chimney. So whatever you got to do, I need your walls not to collapse, whatever that means. I need your walls not to collapse. I need your roof not to collapse. And I need the chimney to have a path. Work it out. Physician, heal thyself. Okay? And then they can say, so when they do it, okay, well, what are you doing? Or how is that working for you? And yes, sometimes it will work for a little bit and then won't. They'll go home and go next week, particularly the very motivated ones will come back and they'll be like, all right, I tried to do it, this way, but I was finding that I was getting more stiff. Okay, well, that's not the coordination that's going to work for you. Let's find another one. This is a process because my job, again, is to facilitate the journey. But if I go and tell somebody based upon my body, well, it's an abdominal support. So you got to use the lower pelvic floor, which I used for a while. That used to be the path that I took, or you got to breathe. It's all about back breathing. It's got to be this, and it does work for some people, but it doesn't work for all. So when I introduce, and the more you use this process and you start to see your students, the more you can be like, oh, well, your body is shaped like so-and-so, not that you'd say the person's name, but you'd be thinking, oh, I have another student that has a body similar to you. And they said they can't feel the back muscles the way that I'm telling you because they have a longer waist. So they don't feel any movement. They feel a drop. So for them, it was easier for them to think about their hips. I just want you to be able to control it and I want it to be free. Okay. Maybe that's because the sensation, maybe your transverse, which is the innermost layer, is your most active. I'm not here, again, to say it's got to be this or it's got to be this, but I need to be informed as a teacher to understand the different possibilities in the muscular functions when they're telling me something that makes sense or don't make sense. So that when they say, okay, I have it better when I breathe into my hips, that you can say, oh, okay, so that means, and then you lay it out. Oh, you're probably using your pelvic floor. Are you saying that you feel it, the whole floor of your torso descend? Oh, okay. Well, then you're probably using that. Cool. Let's do that. Okay. So this is where you got to be on your game. Let's move on. So discovery actions. We already did those. You're going to feel under your ribs. Notice the width. When you inhale, do you feel the full capacity of your lungs expand, or do you only feel one area? Do you perceive the control, that you have control of these functions? What muscles are engaged, which are relaxed? What antagonistic support muscles do you use? And is this most efficient for the style of music that you're singing? Just because it's right don't mean it's right all the time. Right? And if it's not right, what is it efficient for? So then you can start to be like, oh, okay, when I'm getting ready to double dutch, I got to do this. But when I'm jumping rope, I'm going to do this. Okay? So perspective, pedagogy and perspective. let's look at another video. So let's look at C, right? ACT. Something new, something confirmed, something challenged. Okay. I'm opening up my chat window, which because I'm nosy, I got to close it down every time I stop talking because I'm going to look at it if I don't. All right. Something new, something challenged, something confirmed. Play it again. Okay, so some people are saying things, they're confirming that the chords get longer and thinner with a higher pitch. The lengthening, a lot of people talked about that. The way the whole tract opens up with breath is something new. That's what Robert said. Okay, lower notes, shorter folds, yeah. Something confirmed, appear healthy and hydrated. All right. Confirms the miracle our bodies can do this, yes. All right. Now, one of the things that I want you all to think about, and this is the kind of an advanced level of thinking to me, advanced in a sense of, shouldn't use that word, but just another perspective, advanced awareness when you're looking at science in context, is what I look at is, these are first of all beautiful chords, right? Like straight up, it doesn't get as pathological as that. There's nothing wrong with these chords, right? You all would agree that has experience looking at vocal folds. One of the things that I pay attention to because of my demographic is how the walls of the throat respond to certain pitches, right? And how the walls of the throat respond to when she got to the top of her range, and how the walls of the throat responded when she got to the bottom of her range. Things that I would be thinking about is, like, for example, this is where she's in her chest, yeah, right? The fact that her voice, her throat is helping her stabilize the chest sound probably means she doesn't use that sound very often. And someone who sings in chest voice, their throat may not collapse when they get to those notes, and vice versa. Some people's throats might have collapsed when they got to the higher notes. Okay? Why is this important? because it feeds that concept of, well, chest voice is more subglottic pressure, which means that the throat is squeezing, versus it's subglottic pressure and the throat is open. Okay? Yeah? I appreciate you, Alicia, because you are active. I'm watching you, and you're like, yes! Just want to shout you out. I told you I could see y'all, even though so, anyways. Um, so, when I'm thinking about registration,
Sorry, Trinice, there's a couple questions in the chat just about exactly what you were just talking about. Can you point to exactly where you're talking about? Could you show us where that happens in the video? Because people are not sure exactly what that looks like. And then one person just asking you to reiterate that point, because I think that that's exciting news for a lot of people.
okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, right there. Okay, so first what I want you all to notice when you're looking at this video, let me let her breathe. Breathe. Oop, I was trying to catch her on the inhale. Okay. What I'm looking at, so this is the epiglottis, right? So what I'm looking at is how the walls, all these muscles around the larynx. And I am particularly in looking at these muscles because these are a lot of the muscles that people will contract to make the sounds that they think they should make to sound good. Okay? So I'm always looking at stuff from that standpoint. And I'm looking at, or do you see the still frame, the vocal tract shortened in, let me see if I can annotate. Let's see if annotation works today. Red. Can y'all see that? Cool. Can you see how it shortens this way versus, and I'm going to let that play. Play. Oh, turn off annotation. So when she gets to what a quote unquote open, you see, pause. All this space. Around like you can tell by this much. Now you see extra muscles up. It won't let me play it and annotate at the same time, so that's why I can't. But watch these muscles up here. Paying attention, understanding that yes, the camera is moving, but you can also tell just by seeing how the arytenoids, which are here, are moving. Push play. I forgot to turn that off. To push play. Did that help? Okay. So I'm looking at like the fact that I can see her whole walls of the throat, and it looks like her throat is closing down. But these are healthy vocal folds, right? So this is just a matter, and again, not necessarily in a means to be like, oh, she needs to develop this or she needs to develop this. This is literally just for awareness sake. Just to be like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, okay. So how can I get the voice to be just as relaxed as it was when she's in the middle of the range? Or I wonder if we were looking at a voice, a trained voice, that just was lower. How would the vocal folds look when they got shortened, particularly for a female, and the voice still, and the throat still look relaxed? What does that look like? Okay, so those are things that I am always looking for when I'm looking for something new. Especially if you start looking at all of these phonation videos on, like, you search it on YouTube, and you can start seeing like, oh, in this person's throat, it becomes this person's throat, not in healthy singing. in this person's throat, this is what happens. And in this person's throat, oh, that's so interesting. And this person's throat, okay? So going back to, clear all drawings. Okay. Clear again. All right. So now when I'm looking at registration, because again, I'm understanding registration with the concept of being ready to be able to sustain the sound that the person is giving me and develop their sound in an area that they need to go. So therefore, I need to know functionally what's happening with registration, so I know where to go with this singer. So if we're looking at chest voice as saying, I use with my students the 5 fingers. You know, I know a lot of people use that where they say, take your 5 fingers and say, okay, if the vocal folds move in this kind of wave-like motion, then 5 fingers together would be chest voice, you know, longer close phase, release, you know, and then the more head register that I allow, you know, I'll go from 4 fingers to 3 fingers to 2 fingers to 1 finger to be a very thin fold to measure thickness, to help them visualize that. And so we look at a chest dominant registration or falsetto head CT dominant registration as the 2 extremes, knowing that there's no such thing as one being on and one being off, because we're just talking about muscular coordination, right? So we're always in some sort of mix. I think it's always, I appreciate you, Elisa. I see you clapping. You know, I think it's important to recognize that when we talk about mixed voice, that we're always in some sort of mix. And this is me saying this way is me kind of challenging everyone to not necessarily stop thinking about the mix as one sound, like one definitive sound, because I think what it does when we do that, particularly for this demographic, for folk-based, is that it makes people try to mimic a sound versus a function and how that function appears in their voice. Okay? So knowing what that is, I think it's helpful. I like the percentage model. I think Barbara Dasha uses the percentage model. There's a couple of people that use, 80, 20, 60, 40. I like that. It gives me a little bit of flexibility in terms of describing the vocal behavior. One of the things that I do when I'm teaching registration, particularly, and this is something that I feel like is left out a lot of teacher training, period, but of course there's not a lot of teacher training to begin with, which is why it would be left out of it. I feel like in teacher training, we typically stop at beginner voices in terms of, oh, okay, so, this is how you train to register. You train head, you train chest, you put them together, recognize the break, the basics. So I look at it this way, and hopefully you can understand this model. If we're looking at vocal registration as a continuum, the first step in registration development is just awareness that these 2 qualities exist. As working with a very, very, very beginning person, they're like, I don't know, my voice just stops here. Like not even realizing that, no, it's not really stopping. It's just got to establish itself, basically, right? So level 1 is awareness. In level 1, we start to recognize that there are shifts and transitions, and we recognize that there's a point in every voice where there's a primary break, right? As we all know, this is the path, and I'm more so doing this to kind of reiterate what ideally we all know from not only level 1 and level 2, but in our own additional development, right? The next thing that I'm doing is I am trying to identify, well, where do you lie right now? Where's your speaking voice? Where's your speaking voice, number 1? Where's your singing voice right now? Are you predominantly a head dominant person? Are you predominantly a chest dominant person? Where are you? No judgment. I just want to know where you are. And I want you to know where you are. Then you start to say, okay, well, let's figure out where your primary break is. Again, with science, but then narrowing it down to that particular voice, which could be higher, lower, maybe somewhere in the middle, whatever. And then we're starting to develop a balanced registration. We're developing those areas that's not used. We're giving more stability and function in the area that is used. You know, for me, I'm a chest dominant emoter, period. You know, and even though I was chest dominant, my chest voice was weak. When I came to Jeannie, my chest voice was weak. And I'm like, how is that possible when I speak, sing, everything in chest, and you're telling me that it's weak? And she was like, Jason, you've been there, huh? Mm-hmm. And she was like, can you sing soft? And I was like, no. You know, so this is how you start to expose this function, this vocal function thing. So, all right, so we develop the registers, right? Then in level 3, which is typically where we stop, is we say, okay, well, let's develop a mix so that we're learning to negotiate these breaks in a way that's specific for the style that I'm singing. All right, so we start to intentionally, so for the blanketed, oh, we're going to train the chest mix to go up for folk bass. We're going to change the head mix to go down for classical, you know, females. And when you can do this, you have mastered registration. Well, I want to think about another level, which I don't hear talked about a lot, which is, what if registration was based upon your emotional need at that moment versus pitch? Okay? What if the sound quality that I'm looking for, I want to go up past where it should quote unquote go up? And I don't mean, and you see how this diagram, it does get thinner. Yeah. Same thing if I was training the other way. Well, what happens if I bring head voice down really low? So, for example, for me, my head register, which will sound like a mix because everything is a mix, I can go down to probably F. Can you hear that? Can y'all hear that? Okay. That's my head voice on F sharp 3. And you say, are you sure? That was me adding more pressure. That's all it goes. I can go to F today, okay. And I start talking, and then I'm going to chest voice now, but before, nope. So how am I trying it? I'm saying, okay, is the break up here? Do I feel a break? When I get louder, does it get louder in chest, or does it get louder in the place where it is, right? So the same thing, I can take the chest quality or that perceived chest all the way up to my head register. But usually what I'm doing it is I'm doing it based upon like so many other components, you know, that's going to give me that characteristic, you know. And the reason why I make this inference is because in my business, if you will, registration is based upon emotion. I'm not picking I'm picking what registration I want because of that's the color of my sound when I'm in that emotion. Okay? So I'm not picking chest mix down here. That's the softest I can make my chest mix on A flat. I'm not picking soft volume based upon because I'm going to be in chest and I want it to be soft down here. I'm picking it because for me, I would be picking chest voice soft if I wanted to maintain a convicted, authoritarian voice. In the same pitch range, I would probably move to head voice because for me, when my voice goes into head voice, it's usually very tender. I'm usually doing, are you okay? You know, I want to make sure that it's fragile. I mean, emotively, like that's where I am. But if I do the same volume in chest voice and I'm doing it right here, to me that has a very authoritative, like, look, I told you that the thing you should be doing is you need to go from A to B. I'm not going to yell at you. I need you to just understand that this is what I'm doing. Okay, that's the black mama voice, like, don't you make me come up in here. Right? Or the authoritarian mama, because I'm sure all races have the mama voice. Okay? So that's what I'm talking about in terms of registration. And I know I'm running into your break. So let me, and we'll talk about, let's look at this. Oh, so I want you to come up with these discovery actions. And when we come back, we'll start some other aspects. But these discovery actions, what is your default registration for speaking versus singing? What pitch ranges do you normally sing in versus speak in? What sounds or registrations appear in your normal expressive behavior? Not saying what it should be. I just want to know what it is. When you're laughing, when you're excited, when you're frustrated, what do you sound like? Some people are shocked to find that they don't have very much variation. Some people are shocked to realize, wow, I actually do a lot of colors. Some people are like, well, it depends on who I'm talking to. Okay? But that's still a part of your colors, right? How do you perceive the control of these functions? What muscles are engaged? What muscles are relaxed? What type of breathing do you use to support this default? Is it the most efficient breathing strategy for that style? I always go back to that question. And I say that because, you know, when I'm excited, or I think when most people are excited and they're like at a basketball game or a football game or whatever, they go, yeah! Typically, you know, the big breath, the energized body, throwing out your voice, meaning out, not out, you know, throwing your voice outward. Typically, our bodies are not calm and we don't go, yeah! Like, typically that don't happen. I mean, I haven't seen that happen in like real life yet, right? Our body responds to what it's going to do when we're emoting. You know, oh my gosh, look at this little baby. You know, we're typically not, oh my gosh, I can't even demonstrate it. And at the same time, we're typically like, I'm so tired. Right? We're like, we don't even breathe. We're just like, you know what, I'm ready for a break. I'm hungry, stop lying. Right? Let's put this thing together. You already there. Physician, heal thyself. You just ain't paying attention to it. Trying to be somebody else is right. Okay? So I'm going to let you have a break, but let me answer a couple of questions. Take 5 minutes to answer a couple of questions that people might have had. Billy, do you want to tell me, or
Great. So there was only 2 questions that we noted so far.
Good.
Sorry, 3. In the diving breathing video, did the ribs collapse as the diaphragm descended for inhalation and then the rib cage expanded on the exhale, or did I imagine that?
So say it one more time. In the diving video, did the ribs
Did the rib
collapse?
collapse as the diaphragm descended for inhalation and then the rib cage expanded on the exhale, or did I imagine that? So the opposite. So
It,
when they
that's a good question in terms of what the video perceived. I'm gonna go back to it because that would be interesting note. See, that's one of those right here.
It's also possible just that the video is delaying,
Oh,
but just because
point.
that will be everyone might
Seeing
see it
of se-
slightly differently,
Right.
just because based on your Wi-Fi and how fast your internet is processing the
So
Zoom
let me
video.
see what
which is sandwiched between the chest cavity, containing the lungs and the rib cage, and the abdomen, containing the digestive system, including your stomach. The muscles that move the rib cage itself are the internal and external intercostal muscles. They are each attached to the
yes, it does in this video look like the ribs are descending when the diaphragm is descending, but it's descending in this video mainly because it's moving, not so much that it's collapsing. Does that make sense? So when the person is inhaling and the diaphragm is descending, in the video, it's showing because it's showing you all the muscles and everything. It's showing the muscles contract, and it does appear, but it's not for you to say, collapse my lungs, expand my lungs. Okay, so thank you for bringing that up. The second,
How much is she using her intrinsic so this is when we were looking at the video, the vocal folds. How much is she using her intrinsic muscles to make sound? Could that explain why her vocal folds don't appear to have complete vocal fold closure?
well, I think there's a couple of reasons that, that she wasn't having complete vocal fold closures, but this is one of those things where I think, we would have to deal with that singer as that singer, right? I mean, for one, as hopefully every professional voice person has gotten scoped themselves already. If you have not, please make an appointment to do that. You know how difficult it is to go, with your tongue sticking out. Or with the thing down your throat. It just is not comfortable. So I don't want to infer that her closure had some sort of technical reason, right? I can infer about the opening and the closing of the throat because that's more behavior, that's more like common. It's common in all of our, right? It's common that when we're running out of breath, our bodies tighten up, and we have to train our bodies to not be like, I'm gonna die, right? Because it's a fight or flight. We run out of breath, and our bodies go, wait, breathe. Okay, so that I won't make a inference about in that sense. Okay, for that reason. Does that help? I hope that answers.
The next question is, do you use head voice or register? Jeannie is quite clear about using register. Does it matter?
Well, I think it matters if you're a somatic voice work person. Does that make sense? But what matters even more is what you're saying when you're saying, and the person that you're talking to understands what it is that you're saying. So we use head register, right? Head chest register. I say head voice for short, with the intention of meaning head register function. Chest voice, chest register, dominant function. So I hope that clears some things. Yeah? Cool.
Those are all the questions that we had in the chat.
All righty. A few people asked, Adriana said if they can get a link to the breathing. Yes, and Laura will post on the Google Classroom. If you join my Soul Ingredients YouTube channel, which is not like an active, like, hey, no, I just do a lot of playlists. I've just been doing a lot of playlists, and particularly for this class. And on that playlist is a whole vocal anatomy playlist. And then other playlists that we're going to use this week is going to be on that too. So they're public. You can find those as well. So you'll have all of those things. All right. All right, Laura, drop that beat. Have a good break. You can stay, you can go, you can come back, whatever. It'll be open.
Can you put or can you put Donna and Billy in a breakout room?
I
She
sure
needs help.
I sure can. Oh, let me stop sharing my screen first. How about that? Oh.